Welcome to the Straight Path Podcast, where we discuss all things financial planning. I'm Dan Cook, certified financial planner of Straight Path Wealth Management, and today I'm joined by fellow advisor and certified financial planner, Madelyn Rozeboom. Maddie, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Dan.
I gotta say, I'm a little disappointed. You didn't take me up on the offer to bring your baby on the show.
Oh, boy. She's more of a toddler than a baby now, so she would be running all over this place right now.
It would have been a great time.
Until our cameras fall down.
Until the cameras fall down.
Yeah.
But either way, you're here. That's the important part. And today I want to talk about something really important, which is estate planning. Something maybe a lot of people don't really think about or combine with the financial aspect that financial advisors do, but something that Straight Path does, or at least we partner with to kind of get through it.
Yeah.
We're both young. You have a family, and it's a very important part of the process of what we do. Mm-hmm. So as far as the planning goes, one of my favorite quotes is, plan for your plan, not go according to plan. And I don't think that applies more to anything other than estate planning on it. So I feel like people always push it out. They say, I have a long time left. We don't have to worry about it. My health is good. But it's the unexpected things that happen that really throw people off kilter. Mm-hmm. So let's jump right into it from a legal document standpoint. What is everything someone should have?
Yeah, so there are a few different documents that apply to everyone. And then there's one kind of document that the trust that maybe doesn't apply to everyone, that's more optional. So I guess a few documents that come to my mind is a will, and then a power of attorney, and then a healthcare power of attorney as well. Mm-hmm. So those are kind of documents that everyone should have. And then the trust, I think we'll sit on maybe a bit.
Do you have an estate plan put together?
I do. Yes. Yeah. Unfortunately, not as soon as I would have liked to have it put together, but a few weeks ago, we got it done. So I was one of the ones that also pushed it off. And so I can see why when we talk to clients, why when they want to push it off, that I'm right there in that boat too. It's not a fun conversation to have. And there's a lot of questions to answer that maybe you haven't thought about or don't know what to say. So
do you feel like a weight has been taken off your shoulders though?
I do. And I feel like now she's set up well so that if something happens to me or my husband, then she's taken care of and she'll be taken care of by who we want her to be taken care of, and our money will go where we want it to go.
That's awesome. That's a great feeling.
Yeah,
definitely. From the estate planning process, I think something that really makes Straight Path stand out is we're almost like a one-stop shop for everything. Things that you don't really correlate with what financial advisor does, but a lot of people think it's just the investment side of things, right? Mm-hmm. I think that's a big topic conversation we have, and it is an important piece of it. But because we partner with the estate planning side of things and the insurance side and everything along those lines, we can make sure that it's a little bit more smooth in the process of what we have. And we have questions that we ask. And specifically what I'm thinking about in this is the trust versus the will. Mm-hmm. So there are 5 questions.
And if I could jump in too a minute on, I think when we started this process of when we decided to partner with an attorney's office, we were struggling because we would talk with clients who would say, hey, now's a good time to go get your estate plan done. And, you have a family now, or you have this situation where it really makes sense to have an estate plan done. And would we refer them out to an attorney's office? But then that's an extra step for them to go and do. And it wasn't getting done. So then we were like, we need to figure out a way that we can bring this in-house so we can help facilitate the conversations, ask the questions that need to be answered, and an easy way to talk to with them and not have to go to a legal attorney's office. And then we bring those answers that they talk to us about to the attorneys, and then they draft up the documents for us. So it makes it a pretty slick process that is a little bit easier to facilitate.
And it saves some money too.
Yeah. Yes, for sure.
It can be a pricey process if you go there and, just like the financial advisor world, unfortunately, there are some bad apples in the estate planning world too. I've seen some trusts that were made up that it just felt like people were getting sold all these unnecessary things. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of where we jump in. Kind of question I was going to ask earlier was the 5 questions that we ask if you need a trust or if a will is sufficient. You can kind of go through the probate process too. But I'm going to ask those 5 questions that we ask.
Okay.
And then just bounce ideas on why we ask those questions. So first one we have typically is, do you have children under 18? One, we ask that.
Yeah. So one of the big things with a trust, if you have kids under 18, is that you can put restrictions on distributions. So if you didn't have a trust and you only had a will, then when your child turns 18, they'll receive all those assets when they turn 18. And as an 18-year-old, if I look back to when I was 18, I was probably not ready to handle a whole big sum of money. And if you think about it with life insurance proceeds, any investment accounts, any retirement savings, any home sales, the kids could get a lot of money when they turn 18. And so it's important that they're prepared and ready to have that. And not only that, but they maybe just lost both their parents. So they're going through both an emotionally hard situation, but then also a big sum of money. And those two things in combination sometimes don't work well. And so what the trust does is it allows you to put restrictions on the distribution. So you can say, hey, I want my kid to receive a third of the money when they turn 20 years old. I want them to receive another third when they turn 25, and then maybe another third when they turn 30. You can make those ages and those amounts whatever you want it to be, which is the awesome thing about a trust, is it's super flexible and it's very creative. So you can make it kind of how you want it to be laid out. But it allows you to put those restrictions in place, which is what's important for kids under 18.
Yeah. The second question we typically had is, do you have a blended family? Why is that important?
Yeah. So a blended family, it's also important to have a trust because it can add some protections in place so that if one of the spouses pass away, they don't adjust the beneficiaries or they don't change things in the trust to make it better for their side of the family than the spouse who passed away. So it just adds some protections in place that you won't be able to do inside of a will. So that's where the trust jumps in.
So this one you kind of already touched on, but do you want restrictions on withdrawals? I think we could probably pass by them because you already talked about the children, but if you have specific ways that you want the withdrawals to come out, years, I mean, you can even have a whole variety of things there.
And you can add extra specific gifts. So if you want extra $10,000 going to one of your friends before it passes on to your or to your beneficiaries, then you can do that too.
Yeah.
So
always nice to have that. Do you have complicated assets that are difficult to liquidate? Probably real estate you're thinking in businesses. Why is that important?
Yeah. So if you have complicated investments and we're thinking, like you said, businesses, any real estate or multiple different pieces of real estate, not just your kind of primary residence, the trust helps you easily add all those into the trust so that if you were to pass away, then the trustee can easily manage all of those different things because you can put the properties inside of the trust so that they are easy to sell and manage if you were to pass away.
And the last one here is, do you desire to avoid probate? Yes. I think we all do, right?
Right. Yeah. Probate's a big one that if you don't have a trust, you don't necessarily avoid probate because there are still pieces of your assets that could fall into that probate bucket, but a trust ensures that nothing goes through probate. And probate is expensive, but it's not only expensive, but it's really timely. It takes a long time to get through probate. And I know we've had a lot of situations where we've helped clients who are the trustees or the executors of estates, and they've had really messy estates to deal with. And it takes a long time, like can be multiple years before everything is kind of straightened away. So,
and thinking back to something you said earlier about like if you're 18, it's something unfortunate happens where you come into all this money and all this difficulty. You know, having the trust in place can really help avoid not just the probate process and have all these withdrawal restrictions, but the timeliness of it, right? The probate process can be hard for anyone.
Right.
But if you're 18, I'm thinking back to when I'm 18 too. It was like, I wouldn't be ready for that.
And that's another thing that the trust and the will allows you to set up someone to take care of your estate. So that's where I was talking about the executor and the trustee, where hopefully the 18-year-old wouldn't have to help facilitate the estate, but you could assign someone else that maybe is older that you trust to help facilitate everything and make sure it goes smoothly. So the 18-year-old doesn't have to make those decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So there are other ways to avoid probate, outside of the trust. And if you don't need a trust and maybe you said no to all these, outside of probate, because you do want to avoid that, there are ways that we can get around it with just simply beneficiaries on accounts, the different types of assets that can transfer to. We mentioned real estate, liquidate, hard to liquidate. In Michigan, there's the Lady Bird deed. That's something that is essentially a beneficiary on your house and help it trust through. But there are other options and ways too. Can you talk a little bit on what people can do and kind of simply a checklist that can help avoid the probate process?
Yeah. So first, like you said, beneficiaries. So that's huge. So on any investment accounts, any retirement accounts, anything like that where you can add a beneficiary, that's super important to add those in there because that actually supersedes anything that would go through an estate or probate, is they follow whatever that beneficiary is on the account. So you want to make sure beneficiary is up to date, and then any bank accounts, if you most people have bank accounts, but you can add a transfer on death to those accounts. And a transfer on death is essentially a beneficiary for a bank account. So that would be kind of another step that would help you avoid probate if you had beneficiaries on your bank accounts. And then third, like you said, making sure that you have a deed on your house that then, like you said, is a beneficiary for the house is kind of a third piece of the checklist, I think.
Well, let's talk through a little bit about the straight paths process. So we do the 5 questions that we have for the trust side of things, and we kind of go through a checklist as well, if they have things as beneficiaries in place or not. But if someone out there is looking to put an estate plan together, and they also want kind of a combination of the wealth management and all the financial planning that we do, what should be the first step for them coming at a straight path? What does that look like?
Yeah. So straight path we take a very holistic approach here. And so an estate plan is a huge part of that. And so we view it as part of your plan. And so when we're working with you on your financial plan and when we're working with you on managing your investments, we also want to make sure we're looking at your estate plan. And so first we'll ask you if you have an estate plan. If you already have one that's maybe out of date or there's things that should be changed, we'll take a look at that and we'll map it out for you so you can see where are things going right now and what does it look like. If you want changes to be made, then that's when we have a partnership with an attorney's office that we ask you a questionnaire that we go through and we make sure that we have the conversations about the tough questions so that then we can take those answers to the attorneys. They draft up the documents and then they send them back to us. And then we have the clients in to help sign and get them notarized and everything like that.
Is there any situations that come to your mind where we wouldn't be able to help from a estate planning process? I mean, what we partner with, there might be a lot more simplicity on it. But is there anything that you could think of?
Yeah, typically if there are more complex situations or you're trying to maybe take someone out of your estate that you want to, that you don't want to be a beneficiary, or if you have, super lots of businesses or several different properties, we handle kind of the simple plans, and then anything more complex. And we have referral partners that we work with, and we still help facilitate the process so that you make sure it gets done and it's smooth. And we'll even be at the meetings with you, with the attorneys, to make sure things go well. But then we facilitate it that way instead of with our partnership.
Now, I typically begin my podcast with this, but I want to end it with this. Talk about yourself a little bit. Tell us a little bit about what brought you to straight path, your career path itself, college, everything along those lines, of what really made you want to be an advisor.
Yeah, it's a great question. So originally when I was in high school, I always said I wanted to be a teacher. I loved talking. I loved kids. And I was like, the combination of that, teacher, is a great answer. But then my senior year, I did I was a teacher's aide for a class, and I was like, this will not be what I want to do for the rest of my life. So I kind of shifted my thoughts going into college, and I was like, well, I'll just start in business and see. I know I like numbers. There's a lot of different areas you can go with business. So I started with finance because of the numbers piece. And then my sophomore year, I went to Kelvin University, and they came out with a financial planning program. So I was like, that sounds interesting. That kind of combines the teaching aspect that I like, but with adults instead of with kids. And then also with just the side of numbers and kind of the details that I like. It combined those really well. And so then I jumped into that financial planning program. And so then my senior year, I started interning at Straight Path. And then I've been here ever since. So they hired me on full-time after interning. I loved it. They got me into a lot of client meetings right away and got me kind of fully into the process, which is super fun. It's just a great team to work with that really puts clients' needs first, which isn't always the case that I've seen in the industry. So I really appreciate that. And that's where I wanted to land, as a place that did that. So that's ultimately what I'm here for, is I just love helping people. And you get to do that every single day in this career. So.
And from what I've seen so far, you do a great job at it. So you have a very bright future ahead of you. That is all we had today. So I want to thank you for joining us on the Straight Path podcast. Remember, when you plan better, you invest better, you get to live better. See you next time.